The airlock hissed open, and Marcus Webb stepped into a throne room that smelled of ozone and something floral he couldn't name. His hands were cuffed behind his back with gravitational restraints that made his shoulders ache. 2 Velthoran guards flanked him, their iridescent armor catching the light from bioluminescent panels overhead. He'd been a prisoner for 3 weeks, ever since his research vessel had strayed into their territory while mapping an asteroid field. The Velthorans hadn't killed him. They'd studied him like a specimen, poked him with instruments that hummed, asked questions in their clicking language until their translators adapted to his speech patterns. Now they'd brought him here. The Queen sat on a raised platform, her body covered in scales that shifted from deep purple to silver. Her eyes were large, multifaceted, capable of seeing spectrums Marcus couldn't imagine. She watched him with an expression he couldn't read. Around the chamber stood at least 30 Velthorans, courtiers and warriors, all silent. Their collective attention pressed against him like a physical weight. "Marcus Webb," the Queen said, her voice emerging from a translator device on her collar. "You are the human scientist. I am." He kept his voice steady. Panic wouldn't help. "We have observed your species for some time. Your violence, your conquest, your tendency to destroy what you cannot understand." She tilted her head, a gesture that seemed almost curious. "Yet your files suggest you were researching methods to heal damaged neural tissue. Why would a warrior species care about healing? We're not just warriors." Marcus met her gaze. "We're complicated." A ripple passed through the assembled Velthorans, a subtle shift in posture that might have been amusement or contempt. The Queen raised one clawed hand and gestured. A side door opened. 2 guards entered carrying something between them. No. Someone. A child. Marcus's breath caught. The girl looked maybe 7 or 8 in human terms, though her anatomy was clearly Velthoran. Her scales were pale, almost translucent, and her breathing was labored. One of her arms hung limp, and her eyes didn't track movement properly. The guard set her down on the floor in front of the throne, and she slumped immediately, unable to support herself. "This is Kayla," the Queen said. Her voice remained neutral, but something in her posture changed. A subtle tightening around the eyes. "She was injured in a training accident. Her neural pathways are damaged beyond our ability to repair. She will not recover." Marcus looked from the child to the Queen and felt the trap closing around him. "Why are you showing me this? You claim your species has compassion. You claim you heal." The Queen leaned forward. "Prove it. You have access to her. You may use whatever methods you choose. Entertain us with your attempts." "I don't have my equipment. I don't have my lab. I don't even know Velthoran physiology." "You have 3 of your days." The Queen's expression didn't change. "If she shows no improvement, you will be executed as an enemy of our empire. If she dies from your efforts, you will be executed. If you refuse, you will be executed." She paused. "If you succeed, we will reconsider our assessment of humanity." The gravitational cuffs released. Marcus's arms dropped, circulation returning in painful tingles. The guard stepped back. He was alone with the child, watched by dozens of alien eyes, with no resources and no knowledge, and a death sentence hanging over all 3 possible outcomes. Kayla made a small sound, something between a whimper and a whistle. Her functioning hand moved slightly, fingers trembling. She was conscious. She was aware. She knew what was happening. Marcus knelt beside her, his mind already racing through everything he knew about neural damage, about healing, about the universal principles that might apply across species. Her scales felt smooth and cool under his fingertips. Her pulse, when he found it on her neck, was rapid and irregular. Her breathing was shallow. He looked up at the Queen. "I need supplies. Basic medical equipment. A scanner that can show me internal structures. Anything you use for analysis." "You may have access to our medical supplies," the Queen said. "But you will work here, in this chamber, where we can observe. You will not leave. Food and water will be provided." She gestured, and servants began bringing equipment, wheeling in machines on hovering platforms. "Your time begins now." Marcus turned back to Kayla. She was watching him with those unfocused eyes, and he saw something in them he recognized across any species barrier. Fear, and beneath it, a desperate, fragile hope. She was a child, broken and hurting, and she wanted to live. He gently placed his hand on her forehead, feeling the fever heat radiating from her skin. "I'm going to help you," he whispered. "I promise I'll try." The chamber fell silent except for the hum of medical equipment and Kayla's labored breathing. Marcus began to work. The The scanner's display meant nothing to him at first, just patterns of light and color that shifted as he moved the device over Kayla's small body. He'd spent the first hour simply watching, observing, comparing. The Velthair in attendance had provided a basic anatomy chart when he demanded it, and he'd studied the differences and similarities between their species and his own. Different chemistry, different structures, but the fundamental principles remained. Neurons transmitted electrical signals, damaged pathways caused dysfunction. Healing required reconnection or compensation. Kayla's injury was centered in what corresponded roughly to the brainstem, a tangle of severed connections that disrupted everything from motor control to basic autonomic functions. The damage was weeks old, already scarred over. His hands hovered over the scanner, adjusting settings, trying to understand what he was seeing. The assembled Veltherans watched in complete silence. He could feel their eyes on his back. "I need something to reduce inflammation," he said without turning around. "And a neural stimulator if you have one. Something that can deliver controlled electrical pulses." Movement behind him, equipment appeared on a floating platform. Marcus examined each device, reading labels through the translator interface that projected meanings directly into his vision. Close enough. It would have to be. He loaded a syringe equivalent with the anti-inflammatory compound, calculated a dose based on Kayla's size and what he understood about her metabolism, and paused. This could kill her. The wrong dosage, the wrong interaction with her alien biochemistry, and he would poison her instead of healing her. He would die, and she would die, and the Queen would have her proof that humans were destructive. His hand trembled. Kayla made that small sound again, her eyes finding his face. She couldn't speak, couldn't even nod, but her gaze held his. Trusting. Waiting. She'd already been written off by her own people's physicians. She had nothing to lose. Marcus administered the injection into the major vessel on her neck and watched her vital signs on the monitor. Her pulse spiked, then gradually slowed to something more regular. Her breathing eased slightly. The inflammation markers on the scanner began to drop. Small victories. He marked the time and moved to the next step. The neural stimulator was a delicate tool, designed to encourage damaged tissue to form new connections. In humans, the process took weeks or months and didn't always work. He had 3 days. Marcus positioned the device over the injury site, setting the frequency to match Kayla's neural patterns as closely as he could determine. The machine hummed to life. Kayla's body jerked once, then stilled. "Too much," he muttered, adjusting the settings. "Just enough to stimulate without damaging. Come on." He watched the scanner display, looking for any sign of response. There. A faint new pathway forming, neurons reaching across the gap. It was fragile, barely functional, but it was something. He adjusted the stimulator's position by millimeters, chasing the optimal angle. Hours passed. Marcus worked with absolute focus, blocking out the watchers, the pressure, the impossible odds. This was what he did. This was what he'd spent 15 years of his life perfecting. He'd healed damaged brains in rats, in primates, in 3 human patients during experimental trials before funding was cut and he turned to pure research. The principles were the same. The stakes were just infinitely higher. Food appeared beside him at some point. He ate without tasting it. Water. Kayla's eyes closed, and panic surged through him until he checked her vitals and found them stable. Sleep. She was sleeping, not dying. He adjusted the stimulator again, marking the progress on a datapad he'd been given. New pathways forming. Slow. Too slow. He needed more time. "You have completed 1 day," the Queen's voice said from above. Marcus hadn't heard her move, but she now stood at the edge of the platform looking down at him. "My physicians say what you are attempting is impossible. The damage is too severe. Your physicians gave up." Marcus didn't look away from his work. "I haven't. She is my daughter." The words fell like stones into still water. The chamber's silence deepened. "The training accident was my fault. I pushed her too hard, too young. I wanted her to be strong, to be ready for leadership. Instead, I broke her." The Queen's voice remained steady, but Marcus heard the fracture underneath. "If she dies because of your inadequacy, I will make your death last days. If she dies, it won't be because I didn't try everything." Marcus met her eyes. "But she's not going to die. Look at this." He turned the scanner so she could see the display. These pathways weren't there 6 hours ago. "She's healing. It's slow, but it's happening. Her body wants to recover. I'm just helping it along." The Queen studied the scanner for a long moment. "You should rest. You cannot work effectively while exhausted. I'll rest when I know she's stable. You are as stubborn as you are foolish." But she gestured to an attendant who brought a cushioned platform. "Work from here, preserve your strength." She paused, then added in a quieter tone, "Please." Marcus positioned himself on the platform where he could still reach Kayla and continue monitoring the equipment. The queen returned to her throne, but did not take her eyes off her daughter. The vigil continued. By the middle of the second day, Kayla's eyes were tracking movement. The change was subtle but unmistakable. When Marcus leaned over her, her gaze followed him. When he spoke softly to her, explaining what he was doing, her breathing changed in response. Communication. Recognition. The most basic signs of neural recovery, and they filled Marcus with a hope that felt almost painful. "Can you move your fingers?" he asked, holding his hand where she could see it. He wiggled his own fingers in demonstration. Kayla's functioning hand moved, and then, slowly, trembling with effort, her damaged hand shifted. Just slightly. Just enough. Marcus's throat tightened. "Good. That's so good. Rest now." He increased the stimulation gradually, chasing the delicate balance between encouragement and damage. Too much and he'd cause seizures. Too little and the healing would stall. He worked by instinct as much as knowledge, feeling his way through alien physiology with nothing but principles and prayer. The queen descended from her throne and knelt beside him. Up close, Marcus could see the exhaustion in her features, the way her scales had dulled slightly. She'd been watching without pause, just as he'd been working without pause. "How long until we know?" she asked. "By tomorrow. If the pathways stabilize, if her motor control continues to improve, then she'll recover. It'll take time, maybe months of therapy, but she'll recover." Marcus adjusted the scanner's position. If they don't stabilize, if her body rejects the changes, then... He didn't finish. "Then we both lose everything." The queen touched Kayla's face gently, a mother's gesture that transcended species. "I've been cruel to you. I gave you an impossible task and threatened death as motivation. I wanted to break you, to prove humans were monsters who destroyed what they touched. Instead, you have worked with more care and dedication than my own physicians." She looked at him. "Why?" Marcus thought about the question. "Because she's a child. Because she was hurting. Because I could help." He shrugged. "Because that's what we do, the best of us. We fix broken things." "Even when it costs you everything?" "Especially then." The queen was silent for a moment. "If you save her, humanity will have allies in the Veltheran Empire. I swear this on my throne and crown. We will trade, share knowledge, defend your colonies as if they were our own. You will have earned this through compassion we did not expect to find." She paused. "And if she dies?" "She won't." Marcus returned his attention to the scanner. "We're past the critical point. Look, her brain activity is increasing. She's coming back." Throughout the long hours of the second night, Kayla's improvements accelerated. Her damaged arm began responding to commands. Her breathing regulated. The scanner showed neural pathways not just forming, but strengthening, establishing permanent connections. Marcus guided the process, adjusting stimulation, administering compounds to support the healing, monitoring every change with fierce attention. The courtiers had begun to murmur among themselves, watching the child's progress. Some looked skeptical. Others showed expressions Marcus interpreted as hope. The royal guards stood straighter, their posture less rigid. Even they were invested now, watching one of their princesses' slow return from the edge of permanent disability. As dawn light began filtering through the chamber's high windows, casting strange shadows across the floor, Kayla opened her eyes and spoke her first word in weeks. "Mother." The queen's composure shattered. She pulled her daughter into her arms, careful not to disturb the medical equipment, and made a sound Marcus had never heard from a Veltheran. It reminded him of crying, though no tears fell. Kayla wrapped both arms around her mother's neck, the damaged limbs still weak but functional. Marcus sat back, every muscle in his body trembling with exhaustion and relief. "You did it," the queen said, looking at him over Kayla's shoulder. "You healed her. She healed herself." Marcus's vision blurred. When had he last slept? "I just helped." "She did the work." Marcus Webb. The queen stood, still holding Kayla, and the entire chamber rose with her. "You have proven humanity's worth beyond any doubt. You have saved my daughter when my own people could not. You have earned not just your freedom, but our eternal gratitude and alliance." She gestured to the guards. "See that he is given quarters appropriate to an honored guest. Medical attention, whatever he requires." "I require about 16 hours of sleep," Marcus said, swaying slightly. 2 guards caught him as his legs gave out. The last thing he saw before unconsciousness took him was Kayla's face, scales brightening to healthy colors, eyes clear and focused. She smiled at him, a universal expression. He smiled back, and then darkness claimed him with the gentleness of victory. Marcus woke in a bed so comfortable it felt like floating. Soft light filtered through translucent walls. His body ached in every possible way, but it was the good ache of hard work completed, not the pain of injury. He sat up slowly and found himself in a suite that must have been designed for Veltheran royalty, adapted hastily for human proportions. A table beside the bed held food and water, steam still rising from some of the dishes. He ate ravenously, his body demanding fuel. A chime sounded. "Enter," Marcus called, not sure if the translation would work. It did. The door slid open, and a Velthron attendant entered, followed by the queen herself. Marcus started to rise, but she waved him back down. "Remain comfortable," she said. "You have earned the right to receive me informally." She settled onto a seat designed for her anatomy, her movements graceful despite her size. "Kayla is continuing to improve. My physicians are astonished. They wish to study your methods, if you will permit it. Medical knowledge should be shared." Marcus drank deeply from a cup of something that tasted like citrus and honey. How is she really? She walked this morning. Unsteadily, with assistance, but she walked. She spoke in full sentences. She remembered things from before the injury that we feared were lost forever. The queen's scales brightened. A sign Marcus had learned indicated strong emotion. "You have given me back my child. There is no treasure in our empire sufficient to repay that debt. I don't want treasure." Marcus met her gaze. "But I do want something." Her posture shifted, became more formal. "Name it. I want to go home. I want to see my family, let them know I'm alive. And I want to bring back the alliance you mentioned. Real cooperation between our species. Medical exchange, scientific collaboration, peaceful trade. I want our people to know each other as something other than potential threats." He paused. "And I want to check on Kayla. Make sure her recovery continues properly, if that's allowed." "You wish to return?" The queen considered this. "You could remain here as our honored guest, showered with gifts and status. Instead, you choose to leave. I have a life. People who love me. Work that matters." Marcus shrugged. "But I'd come back, if you'd have me. There's a lot we could learn from each other." "You are a strange creature, Marcus Webb. Any Veltheran granted such honor would seize it, would build power and influence, would never willingly surrender proximity to the throne." She stood. "But that is perhaps why you succeeded where we failed. You do not seek power. You seek purpose." She extended her hand in a gesture she'd clearly studied from human customs. "You will have your alliance. You will have safe passage home. And you will always have a place of honor in our empire. Kayla has asked to see you before you depart. Will you grant her that?" Marcus took her hand carefully, matching her grip. "I'd like that." The queen led him through corridors that twisted and turned in ways that suggested the palace had been grown rather than built. Veltheran architecture followed organic principles, he'd learned, each structure unique and alive in its own way. They reached a sunlit chamber where Kayla sat on a cushioned platform, surrounded by attendants and medical equipment. When she saw Marcus, her whole face brightened. "You came." She spoke in Veltheran, but the translator rendered her voices young and eager. She stood, wobbling only slightly, and crossed the space to him. Without hesitation, she wrapped her arms around his waist. "Mother said you were sleeping and we shouldn't disturb you, but I wanted to thank you properly." Marcus knelt so they were at eye level. "You don't need to thank me. I'm just glad you're better. The physician said I would never walk again."
"Never speak."
"Never be myself." Kayla's eyes were large and solemn. "You proved them wrong. You didn't give up even when it was impossible. That's what Mother says. That you're impossibly stubborn." "I learned from the best," Marcus said, glancing at the queen. "Your mother never gave up on you either. She stayed awake for 3 days straight, watching over you." "I know. She told me." Kayla squeezed his hand. "Will you really leave? I was hoping you could teach me about humans, about Earth, about the things you study. But I'll come back, I promise, and when I do, I'll bring all sorts of information about Earth. Pictures, videos, maybe even some human food if I can preserve it properly for the journey." He smiled at her. "And you can teach me more about Veltherans. Deal?" "Deal!" She hugged him again, fierce and trusting. "You're my friend, Marcus Webb. Forever and always." Marcus felt something crack open in his chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the planet's temperature. Forever and always, he agreed. The Queen watched this exchange with an expression Marcus was beginning to recognize as fondness. When Kayla reluctantly released him and returned to her attendants for her next round of therapy, the Queen walked with Marcus toward the palace's landing platforms. She has never attached to someone so quickly, she observed. Veltharan children are usually more reserved. She's been through trauma. Sometimes that changes how we form connections. Marcus watched the alien sky, ships moving between orbital platforms in patterns that looked almost like a dance. She's resilient. She'll be fine. Thanks to you. The Queen paused at the entrance to the platform. Beyond, Marcus could see his research vessel repaired and restocked, waiting for departure. I confess I did not expect this outcome. When my advisors suggested testing you with Kayla's condition, I believed you would fail. I believed you would prove human barbarism and justify our defensive posture toward your species. Instead, you have shown us something we had forgotten. What's that? That true strength lies not in conquest, but in compassion. That intelligence is meaningless without empathy. That the greatest achievements come from risking everything to help another. She turned to face him fully. You have changed our understanding of what it means to be advanced. The Veltharan Empire will not forget this lesson. I will not forget it. Marcus extended his hand again, and they clasped arms in both human and Veltharan tradition. I hope this is the beginning of something good, for both our peoples. It is. The Queen released him. Safe journey, Marcus Webb. May the stars guide you home. And may they bring you back to us when the time is right. Marcus boarded his vessel, his legs still unsteady, his mind full of everything that had happened. The medical bay had been cleaned and restocked with Veltharan supplies, gifts from the Queen's physicians who wanted to study how he'd adapt their tools. The navigation computer showed a direct route to human space, all clearances already granted. And on the main screen, a message waited in perfect English. Thank you for showing us hope. Return soon, friend. Kayla and Maraveth, Queen of Velthar. As the ship lifted away from the platform and accelerated toward the jump point, Marcus looked back at the palace growing smaller below. Somewhere in that organic structure, a little girl was learning to walk properly again, to live again because he'd refused to give up. Somewhere in there, a queen was reconsidering humanity's place in the galactic community. And somewhere in the vast political machinery of the Veltharan Empire, wheels were turning toward alliance instead of conflict. He'd come here a prisoner, scheduled for execution. He was leaving as a bridge between civilizations. All because he'd kept a promise to a broken child and her desperate mother. All because he'd chosen healing over hate, compassion over indifference. The stars stretched before him, infinite and welcoming. Marcus set course for home, but his mind was already planning the return journey. There was work to do, knowledge to share, friendships to nurture. The universe had just gotten bigger and stranger and more full of possibility than he'd ever imagined. And it had all started with a simple choice. To try, even when success seemed impossible. To care, even when caring meant risking everything. To be human at its best when the worst would have been so much easier. As Earth's sun became visible on the long-range scanners, Marcus smiled. He had stories to tell. And more importantly, he had proof that humanity deserved its place among the stars, not through conquest or force, but through the same qualities that had always defined the best of human achievement. Courage, compassion, the stubborn refusal to abandon hope, even in the darkest circumstances. The ships waiting at the jump point confirmed his authorization. Marcus Webb, returning from first contact with the Veltharan Empire. Humanity held its breath. He opened a channel and spoke clearly. This is Webb.
Mission successful. We have allies.
And I have so much to tell you.